If someone asked me to recommend a camera for their church live streaming setup, this is definitely what I would recommend. In the previous video, I showed you what this camera can do and you're getting a lot of value for the price. Other cameras are more expensive than this and don't even do half the things that this does. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do these things on the phone app and also on the computer app. Let's go to OBSBOT.com and then in the resources, downloads, OBSBOT Tail 2, and here you can download the Android app and the computer app, Windows or Mac OS. Currently, the new app is still under review on the Play Store. I'm recording this before the release of the camera, so you can download the APK file from here and install it on your phone. But by the time you're seeing this video, the app should be available already on the Play Store. I'm in the app, I'll click on connection method and go to cellular data because that's always going to be faster than Wi-Fi. And this is not using any of your internet, it's just connecting to the hotspot of your phone. So I'm going to click on camera and it connects. If you want to move the camera, you can click on the gimbal down here and you have this gimbal. You can move it around and you can change the speed of the gimbal. I can make it very fast and move it around very quickly, or I can make it very slow and move it very slowly. Also, another method to move it is to press and hold on the screen anywhere and you'll see that little circle and you can move it around and it will also move the camera. If I press right here, I can rotate the entire sensor inside the lens. And now I'm shooting in portrait mode. Let me turn it back. If I double tap on myself, I'm tracking myself now. Let me zoom in. If I show the gimbal, I can have the zoom in options. Let's say I want to track this. I'll just draw on the screen a little square around it. And here you go. That is what it's tracking right now. It's not my face anymore. It's this little object. If I want, I can track my hand. So now it's following my hand up and down, move it around. Even if there's something in front of it, it doesn't get lost. The tracking is really good. I can save another position by pressing and holding. I'll do update, position 1, position 2, and this resets the camera to the default position. Or if you press and hold, you can make that the default position. I can click here and start recording on the SD card, and here you go. I don't have any microphone plugged into it. That's why it says that it doesn't detect any audio. I can also take a picture like this. I can stop the recording. And right here, I can view what I have recorded. So this is what I recorded now. And this is the picture that I took. And these are things I recorded previously. If I want to download on my phone what I recorded on the camera, I can just select it and hit download, and it's downloading it to my phone storage through this wireless connection. So that's really convenient. Right now I have this video on my phone. If you have any questions, you want someone to answer you, or you want to see what other people are doing with this camera, you can join the Facebook group. I'll leave a link down below in the description box. If I click on the AI settings, I can choose if I'm tracking a group or a single person. I can choose if I want to do a close-up or further away tracking or full body. If I come closer, it will zoom out. But if I do this and I go further away, it doesn't zoom in because it's just tracking the full body. And here I can change the speed of the tracking. If I make it super lazy, I have to move and it moves very slowly. If I make it crazy, I do this. It moves very fast. If you're already tracking and you click on these grid lines, you can make it that the center of the frame is wherever you put it. So let's say I put it right here. This is now the center of the frame. If I move, reset it. Now the center of the frame is back at the center of the image. Now if I go to this settings, I can change things like auto exposure, autofocus, HDR. If I turn off HDR, the image looks a little bit more crunchy because the highlights are much brighter and the shadows are much darker. HDR kind of compresses the dynamic range to have all the highlights and all the shadows in very harsh lighting conditions. You can also show and hide the grid right here. I can flip the image horizontally. If I have flickering lights, I can click on this and choose 50 Hertz or 60 Hertz, depending where you live. Autofocus, I can choose if it's focusing on my face or just a global focus or foreground focus. So this is foreground focus. You can see everything behind my hand is blurred. Remove my hand, it focuses again. But if I have it on face focus and I do this, it will keep the focus on the face. If it doesn't see the face, then of course it will focus on whatever is in front of it. If I click on the screen, I can actually drag the sundial down or up the same way you do on your phone. It's very intuitive. And if I click again, it will automatically change the exposure to what it thinks is right. However, if I have that locked and I tap the screen, I have no sundial anymore. I can't change the exposure that way. Right here, you have the A for auto and M for manual. So if you're on auto, you can still change the exposure value by compensating plus or minus, but the camera is still doing its own thing. So I can bring the exposure down or up, but this is not shutter and not ISO. These are locked. If I do manual exposure, I can change the shutter, smaller number, I get darker image. If I make it a bigger number, I get a brighter image. Same thing, ISO. If I bring it down, I get a darker image. If I bring it up, I get a brighter image. Let's go back to automatic and I will tap on my face. So it automatically adjusts the exposure. Just like your phone camera, this is very intuitive. Right here, you have the auto white balance. I can set it to daylight or fluorescent or tungsten or cloudy. Or you can do a custom white balance and set the temperature yourself. You also have the style. Outdoors, pastel is a little softer on the contrast. And custom, you can set your own sharpness, contrast, saturation, hue. So right now everything is kind of purple and right now everything is kind of green. You can change the brightness of the image just like the edits you have on your phone. Let's go to the settings by hitting 3 dots right here. You can save a custom preset. If you have some settings, you can save them right here. AI gesture control. If I do this, it will start tracking me automatically. And it's very responsive. I don't need to do this many times, just once and got it. It stopped tracking. If I do this, it will zoom in according to the factor that I set. So right here, I have a factor for the zoom. If I increase this, it will zoom in even more. And it's zooming out. Last gesture is for recording. If I do this, it will start recording and you can see right here, it is recording. Do that again, it will stop the recording. Tracking settings, if I want, I can lock the pan axis or the tilt axis. Panning is left and right. So let's do tracking. And if I go left and right, it doesn't move. If I go up and down, it does move. Let me show you the tilt axis. If I lock the tilt axis, it will not move up and down, but it will move sideways. Audio settings, if you have a microphone plugged into the camera, you can select mic input. And if you have a line input coming in from an audio mixer or something else, you can select linear input. Autofocus, you can change between face and foreground and global. We saw that. Auto face exposure, it will expose so that your face is lit up correctly. Because if you have something like a very bright background behind you, like I have right here, it will not take down the exposure to expose for that bright thing. It will focus on your face. You can set limits for the upper ISO and lower ISO so that you don't get the image too bright or too dark. Here we come to the outputs. UVC means webcam. So if this is plugged straight into your computer with a USB cable, you need UVC mode to see it as a webcam. NDI, you need to buy the NDI license. It costs about $100. It doesn't come with NDI, then you'll get a code and activate it. RTSP is also a network protocol, but it's free. However, it's much more delayed than NDI. Media settings for recording, you can choose the codec, either H.264 or H.265. 265 is much more compressed and it's harder to edit, but it's a smaller file size. Resolution 4K 1080p 720. Frame rate from 24 frames to 60 frames. Let's see if I lower the resolution. Do I get more frames? Yes, at 1080p I can do 120 frames. And really cool stuff, I can now actually change the bitrate, which is amazing. I always always advised to record at a higher bitrate, and then you can compress it as much as you want in editing. But if you record at a very low bitrate and you edit it, the video will have a very low quality. Okay, so the bitrate is much more important than the resolution. Even if you're shooting in 720p, if you're recording at a high bitrate, the video will look like it's much higher quality than if you're recording 4K at 5 megabits. You can do the same thing for the network protocols. The SDI output, you can choose between level A and level B. This will rotate the sensor inside of the lens, and you can reset it right here. And if we go into the tail 2 settings, power on recording, when you turn on the camera, it starts recording immediately without having to press record. Power on live streaming, same thing. If you are streaming directly from the camera to your social media platform, you can start streaming as soon as you turn on the camera. Auto power off after 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, very self-explanatory. Timed power off, if I turn that on, I can set a schedule. On Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, I want the camera to be turned on 1 p.m. Timed power on Sunday and Wednesday and Friday, I want the camera to turn on at 10 a.m. So I have church on these times, the camera will turn on time and will turn off on time. This is really cool. Status light, it's the light bar in the front of the camera. If I turn it off, I will get nothing. Tally light, it's the light on the top to tell you which camera is currently live. Battery light, I can turn it off also. Turn off the buzzer. The buzzer is the sound, the beeping sound. So if I'm using the camera at church and I don't want any distractions at all, I can turn off all the lights and all the sounds and it just be there. Live broadcast settings, if you want to stream directly from your camera, you can configure it here. SD card, you can format it from here. If you have important stuff, don't click that. Preset position switching speed. So if I go from position 1 to position 2, how fast do I want it to go? If I turn it down and switch, it's very slow right now. So if you don't want very sudden movements and you want everything to be smooth and slow, you can turn that down. If you want fast movement, you can turn that up. And you can see right now, it moves pretty quickly. Video segmentation. If you're recording very long video, do you want it to make a new file when it reaches 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, 16, 32, or 64? Control protocol. If you're using an external controller like joystick, you can reset all connections. I don't want to do that. Restore factory settings. If you have a problem, you can complain right here to OBSBOT. And about device, you can change here the name. So I'll call it Daniel Tail 2. Here you can configure your wired network and your wireless network. And then when a firmware update comes along, you can update it right here. I'm up to date. But if you're not, it will say update and you can click on it. And you would need an SD card to be inserted in your camera to do the update. And that's pretty much it. I'll show you now on the computer the same settings, but the app looks slightly different. First of all, we have something really cool, which is zone tracking. So if I set this limit right here, I can go up and it will stop tracking. And if I go right here, it will stop. So I can set limits to where it tracks. If I turn this off, it will have no limits. And to set the limits, I can hit set and then move the gimbal and then right click, update. I can do this and update. And now it stops right here. It stops right here. Very cool. Turn this off. So if you want tracking, but you don't want to show things on the sides, you can limit your tracking. Human tracking, single mode, group mode. If you have multiple people, you can track them all together and not just focus on one person. And you can set right here the frame if you want the entire person to show in the tracking, or if he moves further away, you want to keep him close up, it will zoom. It is zooming. And you can make the tracking super slow or super fast. From here, pan axis lock. So it doesn't move sideways, it moves up and down. Tilt axis lock, it doesn't move up and down, it moves sideways. Here are your positions. If I click on the arrow, I can update the position, or I can set it as an initial state. Initial state means when I turn on the camera, this is the position it will go to by default. I can rename it so I can know what I'm clicking on instead of just guessing or remembering the numbers. And of course, I can delete that position. This is where you control the camera. This is the gimbal. Fine means even if I move it a lot, it will move very slowly. Coarse means it will move fairly harshly. This is where I rotate the sensor inside of the lens. So I can make my image go sideways right here, up to 10 degrees plus or minus. So the tracking still works, everything works, but the image is sideways. I can reset it from here, and here is the gimbal speed. If I want to manually move the camera very fast, I can raise this and move it very quickly right here. If I want to move it very slow, I can do this. And right now it's moving very slowly, although I have it all the way. Combine that with fine, then you have really smooth control. You can zoom from here. Autofocus, manual. I can do the manual focus from here. I have something very close up. I can focus on it like this. If I want to focus into the distance, I can do that. Image, here you can turn on and off HDR. I turned it off, turn it on. Focus, this is the same thing as here. Exposure, you can have auto exposure or you can have manual exposure. Anti-flicker, white balance, we went through these. And image settings, brightness, contrast, saturation, sharpness. Let's go to more. From here, you can set a position to the camera and a zoom amount and say that this is the initial position. Done. So when I turn on the camera, even if I have moved it around previously, like so, if it's off and I turn it on, the first position it will go to is this. But I don't have to do it from there. If I have a position that I already like from here, I can click on the arrow and set as initial state. Device power on and off, auto power off, time power on and off. We talked about this. Output, UVC is the webcam option, NDI, RTSP. We went through these. Media settings, we also went through them, and gesture controls, it's all the same. Audio, we don't have anything plugged in. Mirror image, it will flip it around horizontally. Depending if your camera is facing away from you or towards you, you might want to reverse the gimbal. So if I do this right here, now I move this, it will move the camera the other way. General settings, record on power on, buzzer is the sound of the camera. Status light is this one. If I turn it off, goes off. Tally light is on the top. Battery light is these bars. If I turn it off, they will go off. SD card, I can format it from here or set video segmentation to 64 gigs. So it will not cut up my videos into multiple files if I'm recording very long session. Reset connection, about device. If you have an external controller, you can pair it from here. Now we're not done yet. There's a few more settings. You can from here turn on keyboard shortcuts. So I have it configured to hit Alt and the arrow keys. I can move my camera around with these. So if I'm on another app, I don't need to go to this app. I can just hit Alt and the arrow keys and move the camera, and hit Alt and I to zoom in, and Alt and O to zoom out. Where do I configure these? In the settings, global hotkeys, and you can change them from here. You can also record from your computer, not on the camera itself. So let me just turn off the UVC mode and I'll open right here the preview. So this is what the camera sees. I can hit record from here and it's recording that file straight onto my computer. I'll stop and it's this right here. Now, depending on your computer, you might not be able to get very high quality video from that, but nevertheless, you can do it. In the settings output, you can also change the format of that recording to QuickTime or MP4 or MKV. MKV means if you crash in the middle of the recording, you will not lose your video. And you can change the location to where it's recording it and change between hardware and software encoding. If you have any questions, you want someone to answer you, or you want to see what other people are doing with this camera, you can join the Facebook group. I'll leave a link down below in the description box. And if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, click on the video on the screen right now, and I'll see you there.